alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a returning guest from the mists of yore, not that long ago. I think it was 2018 we last had Kelsey Rae Barthel on the show. Welcome back, Kelsey.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back, and you've got a new book out on Up with Inkshares, correct?
Yes, I do. It's called Beyond the Masquerade, and it's a sequel to my first book, Beyond the Code.
Sweet. Yeah, Beyond the Code, we talked about that last time, so could you tell people what this series is about?
It's a urban fantasy adventure about people who are warriors in this ancient bloodline called knights that serve influential families, and they each have special abilities, and it's a lot of intrigue and action with swords and guns and betrayal and superpowers too.
Good stuff. Sounds like a fun series. Actually, I'm so bad at reading these days, but I'm trying to get better at it, and that one's on the list once I get more into the reading game again. It's awkward to try to do that. That one's been sitting on my Kindle for forever. And
yeah, the main thing that keeps me reading is going on the bus.
Oh yeah, I even if I could, I wouldn't be doing that now. Even if I had anywhere to go, I wouldn't be doing that now because, boy, yeah,
crazy.
It is still 2020, at least for a little while longer, and the pandemic is still. It's really raging here, but never mind that. That's like weather talk. We don't do that on this podcast.
No, this isn't about that.
No. So, yeah. So basically, I'm thinking I want to ask you about kind of writing urban fantasy in general. I know that you've only written these two books, right? These are your first two novels, right?
Yes.
But there's always something special about those early books, if you ask me. I still remember my first one quite fondly, even though it was trash. I was 13. It was pretty bad. But it had some things. I want to make to a point here because it had some things in it that I'm like, wow, I really wish I'd written more about that later and not just kind of said that was the problem with that book.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things I'm like, oh, that wasn't the problem in hindsight. It was just the fact that I didn't know how to tell a story back then.
Yeah. It's a lot of people look back on their like early stuff and they're like really embarrassed by it. Like even I look back on some of my earlier drafts of Beyond the Code because I was working on it long before it was published, and I'm like, what? Where was I going with this?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I wrote I don't think I would want that first book published. The first one I wrote, it was called. Well, I'm not going to say what it was called because there's some stuff that's kind of inspired by it coming down the pipe eventually for me. But it can be different storylines and stuff, but same kind of idea. But the interesting thing about it to me is that I really had, a concept there that I liked, and I had some story beats I really liked. It's just that they didn't always go together, and it was yeah. But on the whole, the ideas and stuff were pretty good. Even for now, like I thought, oh, those were pretty good ideas. I just didn't execute them super well. So, yeah. and I think one of the reasons I did those ideas in that book is because it was my first book. I'm like, I'll just do whatever, and that's a good attitude, all your
really
right?
Good ideas, and just.
No, what do you think about that attitude, though? Do you think throwing? I mean, I don't think it was quite throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, but it seems to me now that my most successful, like the easiest books I had to write, the easiest time I had writing a book, and the most fun I had writing books kind of coincide with the times I was just wild and free, maybe.
I completely agree with that. Like when I would write short stories as a kid, and when I write the earlier stuff as for Beyond the Code and for other stuff, it just flows a lot easier when you really don't know what you're doing.
Yes. Isn't that how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, because you're not as concerned with like the technical aspects, so you just write what's in your head.
Well, and you're not as concerned with structures, at least when you get to here we are 18 years later since I wrote my first book, almost 18 years since I finished my first rough draft. And it's silly. It's so silly that I'm like, oh yeah, now I feel like I got to do it this way. I got to make sure these things work. Because, and it's true, it's like in, Star Wars. You must unlearn what you have learned. It's Yoda. Because, at least for me. I mean, it's like, yeah, a lot of this stuff isn't helpful. And that's one of the things I try to tell other authors all the time, other writers all the time. Anyway, that's just... I don't know why I'm on my soapbox right now, but whatever.
That's why they say, write drunk, edit sober.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, that doesn't really work, because if I drink, I just curl up in a ball and fall asleep. But whatever. Hopefully after I put the bottle down.
Yeah. Like, no, my drink.
Oh, yeah. So these books, they're, action, adventure, intrigue, that kind of thing. That's the sort of thing I really like to read too. I mean, obviously, it sounds very up my alley, and the stuff I've read of it was very up my alley. But I guess what I'm trying to say is your approach to writing this. How did you approach writing your first book? I guess, and I mean, we can talk more about Beyond the Masquerade in a little bit, but I'm still very curious about that.
Well, I'm a very much a planner, like the term, like planner and pantser. I basically write down every idea I have for it, and then I structure it out and I build it up like a house.
Okay.
And the ideas that I got for this book were very inspired by anime and shows like Ruby, or with just that high octane action.
Oh yeah,
with kind of a fantasy element.
Yeah, it specifically the concept for your story kind of reminds me a little bit more specifically of something like Fate Stay Night or Fate. Well, I like Fate Zero a lot better. Inspirations
as well.
But that whole series,
master,
yes,
servant dynamic.
Yeah, there's some pretty apparent parallels there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the servants are basically wizards, and I guess the servants aren't wizards. The masters are wizards, and the servants are knights, basically, in Fate universe.
Nobles,
but yeah, but yours is a little different that way. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. They're like people of high influence, but they don't have any special abilities on their own.
Okay. Yeah. That's. Yeah, I also know, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is the kind of the fractal world building, where you have a character that is, you have a central character, right? And then you kind of have their immediate network of allies and their family, their boss. In this case, master servant, the knight and the master kind of thing in your story. But then as an author, it's really fun to kind of create copies that are different. Okay, this is this pair. This is this other pair that's got a similar they have a similar relationship with each other, but they're very different characters. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you're not copying the characters.
The different relationships kind of work in different.
But I think that makes it a really interesting structure because the parallels make the story not only easier to read, I think, but more understandable for the reader. Because I've noticed one of my more popular books has this kind of thing going on. Actually, most of my books, I do something like that. Where to simplify the character creation, I mean, they're not all free agents. They're not all wandering around. Yeah. Most of them are tied because people aren't generally, freelancing badasses without any friends. The people who we relate to define us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's kind of comes up to the really working a background of a character before you write them, because you don't have to do this for every character. You don't have to make a background for just Joe Blow down the street that's in one scene. But for your main characters, it's good to make a fully fleshed out background so you know them as a person and you know how they react and how they'd act and how they'd follow through with certain things.
Yeah,
that's how you get good, consistent character growth.
Yeah, it's very true. Just knowing the background of a character can make it a lot easier to write the story too. I mean, because I'm a discovery writer. I don't do the planning stuff so much. Or that's why. But usually when my most successful books, I know a bunch about the characters before I get started.
Oh yeah.
I know a fair amount anyway. And one of my longest novel I actually I wrote a couple scenes that aren't in the book with the main character. They just take place. They kind of just like, okay, this the main character is like this. Sort of a couple like kind of figurative scenes before I wrote the rest of the book, and that book ended up being an enormous, big fat book. At least for me, over 160,000 words long. It's a lot for me. But
yeah, and you don't have to like include every little like facet of their personality or their background in the story, but just like knowing it in the back of your head makes it so you, like I said, so you know how they would act as people. Absolutely,
yeah. And then and also like the family stuff. I mean, I really like coming up with this is the kind of character. Because I have a big family in real life. I had 4 siblings growing up, and having a character who has, this is an only child, or this is not an only child, has these siblings and these cousins and these extended family members, it really actually helps me develop a world around them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can like pull those characters into different circumstances, and like when they go to different places, and
absolutely,
and it helps like pull in that familiarity between the characters, and it's fun like for reading or watching stuff when you see characters that you've grown to really like, see their family and see how they relate to them.
Yeah, getting into that kind of depth to the character and their background is really, I think, really fun.
Especially when you grow attached to the characters. Mm-hmm. And like when I was watching this one anime and they like had a background with this one character, and you see his like father and mother, and you see that his like father looks just like him, and I was just like, oh my god, that's so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, that and it doesn't always have to be, bespoke, but it can, like a crazy, like all fits together like a puzzle piece, because that makes it feel even more real. Like even if those characters don't all directly relate to the main story, or they're not all, like I was just thinking, because anime is on my mind because you talked about it. I'm like, I was thinking like Naruto, which is one of the longest ones I've actually paid attention to for the whole run, in manga at least. And in that, the characters' families are really important in the backstory, and then and even though Naruto doesn't appear to have a family to start with, it becomes very important very quickly in the second half of the show.
Yeah, it's like that's kind of like an ongoing theme with the family in that show, considering like you see the differences between people growing up in good families, or
the more positive
versus like neglect and then just being out of touch with them.
Right.
Yeah, you see how that colors like like the way certain characters react to certain things.
Yeah, and that series has also got a really good kind of core to it around these. Obviously, it's basically centered around one relationship, and yet this is enormous sprawling fantasy story.
Yeah,
I love that kind of vibe. And Naruto doesn't always do it right for me, but it's overall pretty positive of an experience in my mind anyway. My back.
Yeah, like with the family thing in my book, like with the main character Aurora, like her family is a very, very big thing about her, because it's about about her family line and the responsibilities that she's been given. It's very much tied to her identity, but then you meet characters who are like displaced and don't know where they're from, and you just see that kind of. What would you call it? Dichotomy.
Dichotomy.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
Brain's looking for words.
Well, you found it. You found it eventually. I got an assist, maybe. Anyway, so that's really interesting. So tell us a little bit about Beyond the Masquerade. Beyond the Code is, knights, masters, lots of action and adventures. Beyond the Masquerade similar to that? Are you going to do some differences, some changes there?
We will see a little bit of differences. We will Beyond the Masquerade follows basically the two main characters of Beyond the Code, which is Ranger and Luna, after they really cemented their alliance with each other and have a strict mission to go out and help other knights and other people who have been wronged by the corrupt town council. So, and Beyond the Masquerade delves into going beyond the Order, which is the system that they all run with.
Mm-hmm.
So you see people who like have that bloodline but are apart from the Order, and then you have people who were like abandoned by it, and people who just people who don't fit into it, and it goes for an overarching theme of basically beyond the masks that they all wear.
Oh yeah, okay.
So breaking apart from that and moving towards something different.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
It still has like a lot of action, but it also has a lot more character development. It has a lot more characters, new enemies, new allies, and it goes out and explores the world a bit more.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. It's always those second books can be really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually in the process of I'm writing a book 3 right now, but I got a book 2 for another series queued up right after that one. And I because it's me, I've got like 40,000 words in the second book already, but from a few years ago when I started it. But it is so difficult to sometimes to get that same essence back and then move it forward without. I mean, the second sequel, the sequel slump is really normal, and I can see why it is, especially in movies and stuff where you got a huge team and you got to try to get the right people back. But in books, at least generally the book is being created by one person, and it's much easier in that regard for us to just kind of go back and like, okay, this is how that first book was. We don't want to depart from it too much, and we gotta, it's still a challenge though.
Yeah, it is, because you like want to keep to what people liked about the first book, but also go into new stuff so they don't think that you're stagnating.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tough. But like the second Beyond the Masquerade is going to be in like a little bit of a different format than Beyond the Code, so
She changing point of view or something?
Well, the points of view change. It still follows mainly the same characters, but the structure is a little different. Where like the Beyond the Code was, it's like full story that like from beginning to end, but like that goes on to the same things. But this one is six individual stories that are still connected chronologically, like they do go in a line, and they are pulled together by the same theme, but it's kind of structured a little differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got it's almost like almost like an anthology or a season of a TV show. Yeah.
Yeah. Like whereas like how in shows sometimes where like the either like the season finale or the season like premiere is like an adventure that spans like a couple episodes,
right?
But it's all like the same adventure, just to be continued kind of thing. That's like what Beyond the Code is, and Beyond the Masquerade is when you kind of get more into the episodic adventures.
Okay, that's interesting. I actually kind of unwittingly did that with one of my series. First book being Orphan Mage, which is basically one. It's I mean, it's not really it's pretty episodic too, but it's more it's basically I conceived of it as one book originally. And then when I originally published it, I split into 3 novellas. So the 3 sequels after that were 3 novellas. But then I decided, I'm going to put Orphan Mage back into one piece, because that's really how it's a much better story that way. And so when I did that, I'm like, I really shouldn't just leave these 3 little novella things lying around, because it doesn't make any sense, especially because they're essential to the story. So I bundled those all up together and made it for book 2. Anyway, it sounds kind of similar to what you're doing here, in a way.
Yeah, I had that idea of like just releasing them as a novelette, like just little novelettes, because they're a little shorter. But like the problem is like the first adventure is probably like the shortest one I've written so far. But then like the third one is pretty long, so I'm like, It was just hard to figure out, and I thought about taking one out to shorten up the book, because it was getting a little long.
Oh yeah.
But I'm like, they all kind of work together chronologically, and they all kind of work together with that theme. And so I didn't really want to break that up.
Oh, nice though. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think. I think long books are kind of coming back into style in the
Yeah.
independent circuit anyway. Though there's always room for short stuff too. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty happy with, in general, how the indie market looks right now. I mean, I haven't had that much success with it yet, but I'm like, okay, what if I be just like there's at least there's possibilities around every corner there though. It's
Yeah,
not like
like
you're gonna be limited by what you're creating.
Yeah, there's like a little less of a barrier now. Like
Yeah.
with self-publishing and everything, you don't have to just write what's popular so you can get the big companies to approve of it. You can do more creative, more unique things and not have to worry about getting past that guardhouse of what they think will sell.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can at least go find out if it sells all on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kelsey, we are running a little low on time for this episode, but if you could tell people a little more about Beyond the Masquerade and the situation you're looking at there with the publication, then we
Sure
can
thing.
move on. Yeah.
Sure thing. Beyond the Masquerade has been entered into the 2020 all-genre manuscript contest with inkshares.com. It's going to be a contest that's usually, before with Inkshares, the contests were just a pre-order platform where like the highest pre-order won. But in this one, it's going to be judged on pre-order count, reader interaction, and overall quality of the manuscript. So it is entered in there now and gaining followers and more feedback. So if you want to go to inkshares.com, look up Kelsey Rae Barthel, and you can find both Beyond the Code and Beyond the Masquerade on there. Give it a follow, give it a share, and pre-order it if you like. The first two sample chapters for Beyond the Masquerade are on the website. And if you want to go in commitment free into the series, Beyond the Code is available on Amazon with the digital copy for completely free.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes, the people should definitely go check that out. Thanks for being on the show, Kelsey. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's about it for our show this week. And as for you listeners, you can find more about us, find more about Alive After Reading on mentalcellarpublications.com. And you can find more of my books at timniederwriter.com or on amazon.com. Thanks for listening.
That tears it.